Marina Chen stood in her mother's immaculate kitchen, surrounded by the smell of jasmine tea and fresh-cut peonies, listening to words that would change everything. "We think it's best if you skip Christmas this year, Marina. You're going through such a negative phase, and we don't want that energy affecting everyone else's holiday." Her mother, Diane, said it while arranging white orchids in a crystal vase, her manicured fingers adjusting each stem with surgical precision. She didn't even look up. The kitchen where Marina had learned to make dumplings, where she'd done homework at the breakfast bar, where countless family celebrations had been planned, she was now being banned from entering it on the most important day of the year. Marina was 29 years old. She had a master's degree in communications. She'd worked for the same advertising agency for 5 years before budget cuts eliminated her position 3 months ago. In her family's eyes, this made her a catastrophic failure. "Mom, it's not personal, sweetheart." Diane finally glanced up, her expression perfectly calibrated between concern and condescension. "Your sister Lily is bringing her new fiancé. Your brother Jason just made partner at his firm. Even your cousin Wei is getting promoted to regional manager. The dinner conversation will naturally focus on achievements and future plans. Your presence would just make things awkward." Awkward, that was the word they'd chosen. Not, "We'll miss you," or, "We wish things were different." Just awkward, like she was a stain on expensive upholstery or a crack in fine china. Marina felt something crack inside her, but her face remained perfectly neutral. Years of family dinners had taught her to school her expressions, to absorb criticism without flinching, to accept her designated role as the disappointing daughter without protest. "I understand," she said quietly, gathering her keys from the counter. "You're not upset, are you?" Diane's voice carried a note of impatience, as if Marina's feelings were an inconvenience she shouldn't have to manage. "This is for your own good. Next Christmas, when you've gotten yourself together, things will be different." Marina walked to her car, a 7-year-old Toyota with a dent in the passenger door, and sat behind the wheel for a long moment. Her phone buzzed in her purse. Probably her sister Lily, texting about Christmas plans that no longer included her. What her mother didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Marina had won $95 million in the lottery 18 days ago. The ticket was in her wallet, officially claimed, the money sitting in a newly opened bank account that showed a balance she still couldn't quite process, $57 million after taxes. She'd been planning to announce it at Christmas dinner. Had imagined their faces when she revealed that the family failure had become their salvation. She'd made mental lists of how to help them, pay off Lily's student loans, fund Jason's dream of starting his own practice, finally give her parents the retirement villa they'd always wanted. For 2.5 weeks, she'd carried this secret like a gift waiting to be opened, imagining gratitude, respect, maybe even a little pride from people who'd spent years making her feel like she wasn't quite enough. Now, sitting in her dented Toyota outside her childhood home, banned from Christmas dinner for being too much of a failure, Marina started to laugh. It began as a chuckle, then built into something harder, edged with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her brother Jason. "Mom told me about Christmas. Probably for the best. No pressure on you to pretend everything's fine." The assumption that she'd be relieved to be excluded, that she'd be grateful they'd made the decision for her, was the final crack in something that had been breaking for years. Marina started her car and drove to her apartment, a small one-bedroom in a converted building that her family referred to as that place Marina's staying at temporarily. She'd lived there for 4 years. Inside, surrounded by thrift store furniture and walls she'd never bothered to decorate because her family's commentary made her feel like she was just marking time until her real life began, Marina made a decision. She wouldn't tell them about the lottery. Not yet, maybe not ever. Instead, she would do something she'd never done before. She would live for herself, make decisions based on what she wanted rather than what might finally earn their approval, and see what happened when she stopped trying to be the daughter they wanted and started being the woman she actually was. The money wouldn't change who she was, but it would reveal who they were. And Marina had a feeling she was about to learn some very uncomfortable truths about the people who claimed to love her. 6 months earlier, Marina's life had looked very different. She'd been working 60-hour weeks at Hartman & Associates, a mid-sized advertising firm where she was known for pulling off impossible deadlines and salvaging difficult client relationships. Her boss, Richard Hartman himself, had relied on her to handle their most demanding accounts. The Peterson campaign had been her biggest project yet, a complete rebrand for a regional grocery chain trying to compete with national retailers. Marina had worked for 3 months on the strategy, the creative direction, the media buy. Everything. Then Richard had presented it to the client. Under his name, without mentioning Marina's involvement at all. When the campaign launched and immediately flopped, because the client had demanded last-minute changes that Marina had warned against, changes Richard had approved without consulting her, Marina became the scapegoat. Restructuring, Richard had said, not meeting her eyes during the termination meeting. Nothing personal. Economic climate, you understand. The two junior associates who'd contributed nothing to the campaign kept their jobs. Marina, who'd worked herself to exhaustion, was shown the door with 2 weeks severance and a reference letter so lukewarm it might as well have said, unemployable. Her family's response had been predictable. Her mother suggested she move home temporarily. Just until you figure things out. Though honestly, Marina, maybe this is the universe telling you that advertising isn't your calling. Her father, a successful architect, wondered aloud if she'd done something to cause the firing. Companies don't just let go of valuable employees for no reason. Lily, who'd married a dermatologist at 26 and now spent her days planning charity galas and renovating their home in the suburbs, offered to ask her husband if his practice needed a receptionist. There's no shame in starting over, Marina. We all have to humble ourselves sometimes. Jason, riding high on his recent promotion to partner at his law firm, suggested she consider more stable career options. Maybe teaching? Something with benefits and job security. These creative fields are too risky for someone who needs stability. The implication being that Marina, unlike her successful siblings, needed stability because she couldn't be trusted to create it for herself. Marina found a new job within a month, a smaller agency, less prestige, slightly lower pay, but good people and interesting work. She told her family during their weekly Sunday dinner at her parents' house. That's wonderful, dear, her mother had said with the exact tone people use when children announce they've colored inside the lines. How much does it pay? The question, asked in front of her entire extended family, was designed to establish hierarchy. Marina made less than her siblings. Therefore, she was less successful. Therefore, she needed more guidance, more management, more casual comments about her limitations. Marina spent the next week testing the waters. She'd endured it because she'd been enduring it her entire life. Any of them could see her differently. The youngest of three, if any of them would chosen creativity over stability, passion over prestige. The first test was her car. She'd watched her siblings collect achievements like trophies while she collected criticism disguised as concern. For a brand new lottery tickets had started as a tiny rebellion. Midnight blue, every Friday evening, she'd stop at the convenience store near her apartment and buy $10 worth of Powerball payment that he'd asked twice. It was a waste of money. Her father drove it to work on Monday and parked in her usual spot. Statistically foolish, then Jason would add. It took 3 days for Lily to notice. By lightning. Marina was eating lunch at her desk when her phone rang. With that condescending smile that made Marina want to scream. Lily said without preamble. But those tickets represented something her family couldn't understand. Financially irresponsible. Not hope of winning, but like taking on debt you can't afford to try to look successful. Life contains possibilities beyond the narrow path. We know you're embarrassed about the job situation. On November 7th, buying an expensive car you can't afford isn't the answer. Mr. Kim at the Marina took a slow breath. She hadn't watched the drawing that night. She never did. Lily laughed. The ritual was the purchase, not the result. Marina, come on. The next morning, be realistic. Scrolling through news while drinking that kind of money in her small kitchen. What if I said I'd been doing better than you think? $95 million Powerball jackpot won on tickets sold in the city. Marina, something had made her dig the kind of denial mom was talking about. Some instinct, some tiny voice that said check to avoid dealing with reality. Matched. After they hung up, by the fourth match, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the ticket. Even confronted with evidence that contradicted their narrative, the winning combination, they would find explanations Marina that sat down on her kitchen floor and stared at the wall for 45 minutes, the one who needed guidance. Then she'd called in sick to work, didn't change driven to the lottery office, meant she was making poor financial decisions. After taxes, the second test came that weekend. Marina stopped by her parents' house, walked around in a daze. Expensive wine from a boutique vineyard, sat at her desk, flowers from the upscale emails that charged all while her bank account displayed a number that looked like a typo. Chocolates from the specialty shop downtown. She bought the same lunch, drove the same routes, her mother accepted them with polite gratitude and no curiosity, while secretly being one of the wealthiest people in the state. Drinking tea from the service Marina's grandmother had brought from Taiwan. She would announce it at Christmas plans. The whole family would be there. Lily wants to do a formal sit-down dinner this year. Uncles, 8 courses. Her parents' oldest friends. She's hiring a private chef. She'd wait until after the meal. Stand up and reveal her news. It is. Then between that and Jason's children's private school tuition going up again, college everyone's feeling financially stretched. She'd imagined why we thought simplifying her Christmas would be helpful. The apology in her mother's eyes when she realized she'd been wrong about her youngest daughter. This was Marina's opening. The respect in her father's expression. The issue for me. The surprise in her siblings' voices when they understood that Marina that signaled she was about to say something she'd never taken a risk that would actually be devastating. Had succeeded beyond any of their accomplishments. There's no shame in your financial situation. For 2.5 weeks, but let's not pretend it's something it's not. Polishing it like a precious stone. You drive past your apartment building when everything would change. I know what those units rent for. When she would finally be seen, approximately what you made, celebrated, and I know you've never been particularly good with Christmas dinner for being too much of a failure recently. Her mother studied her with the intensity of someone examining a potential their opinion of her. Marina, it would only reveal how little they actually knew her. I can tell when you're struggling. They'd constructed a version of Marina elaborate stories about rather than her reality. It's concerning. The question wasn't whether to tell them. Not coping well with your current circumstances. The question was whether they deserved to know it all. I'm trying to tell you that my circumstances have changed. Have they? Or are you ashamed of where you actually are and creating fantasies to feel better about it? Marina felt something inside her go perfectly still. Why is it impossible for you to believe I might actually be doing well? Because I know your history. I know your salary. I know what your apartment costs and that your car until recently was falling apart. This sudden claim of wealth, Marina, it reads as denial. As an inability to accept reality. What would it take for you to believe me? Her mother sighed, and in that sigh was every disappointed conversation they'd ever had. Honestly, I think you're struggling more than you want to admit, and you're compensating with stories that make you feel better about yourself. It's not unusual for people in your situation. My situation. The perpetual underachiever situation. The disappointment situation. Marina stood up slowly. I should go. Don't be dramatic, Marina. I'm trying to help you face reality. Oh, I'm facing reality, Mom. More clearly than I have in years. At the door, her mother delivered the final blow. Before you go, there's something else. About Christmas. Marina turned back, some part of her still hoping. Your father and I have been discussing it with Lily and Jason. We've decided it would be better if you don't come this year. You've been going through such a difficult time, and holidays can amplify stress. We're worried you might get emotional or make a scene. It's better for everyone if you stay home. Better for everyone. We love you, Marina. But you have to admit, you don't have much to be thankful for this year. Your presence would likely bring down the mood. Maybe next year, when you've gotten your life together, things can be different. Marina walked out without another word. Because in that moment, she understood something that changed everything. They didn't want her to succeed. They needed her to be the family failure. It gave them someone to feel superior to, someone to manage and pity and use as a cautionary tale. Her success would threaten the entire family dynamic they'd built around her inadequacy. As she sat in her Lexus in their driveway, surrounded by the neighborhood where she'd grown up, Marina felt something shift fundamentally inside her. The money wasn't going to fix this relationship. But it could certainly end it on her terms. And maybe it was time they learned that the daughter they'd dismissed so casually wasn't as powerless as they believed. Marina called her best friend Priya that night. They'd met in college, bonded over late-night study sessions and a shared love of terrible reality TV, and maintained their friendship despite Priya moving to Seattle for work 3 years ago. Priya answered on the first ring, immediately sensing something in Marina's voice. What happened? Marina told her everything. The lottery win. The planned Christmas surprise. The exclusion from the holiday. Her mother's assessment that she was creating fantasies to cope with her failures. I'm not surprised, Priya said when Marina finished. I've watched your family treat you like the designated screw-up for 10 years. But Marina, this is how they see you when they think you have nothing. Let that sink in. It has sunk in. Good. So what are you going to do about it? Marina looked around her apartment, at furniture she'd bought secondhand because spending money on herself had always felt self-indulgent, at walls she'd never painted because her family's comments made her feel temporary in her own life. I'm going to disappear, she said. Start over. Build a life where nobody knows me as the family failure. Are you asking for permission or talking yourself out of it? I don't know. What kind of person cuts off their family? The kind whose family cut them off first, Priya said firmly. Marina, they banned you from Christmas because they were embarrassed by your existence. That's not love. That's cruelty with a biological excuse. But what about when my parents get older? What about my nieces and nephews? What about the 29 years they've spent making you feel like you weren't good enough? Marina, at some point, you have to choose yourself. Even if nobody else ever has. The words settled over Marina like a blanket, both comforting and terrifying. Choosing herself meant walking away from people she'd spent her entire life trying to please. But maybe that was exactly what she needed to do. Over the next week, Marina began making changes. She gave notice at her apartment, hired a realtor to help her find a new place in a different neighborhood, somewhere she'd never accidentally run into family members. She bought new furniture that actually suited her taste rather than her budget. She got her hair cut at an expensive salon instead of the bargain place she'd been going to for years. Every change felt like shedding a layer of someone else's expectations, revealing the person she might have been if she'd never spent so much energy trying to prove she was enough. On a Tuesday evening, Marina found herself driving past her parents' house. Cars lined the street, Lily's Mercedes, Jason's BMW, various vehicles belonging to aunts, uncles, and cousins. Through the front window, she could see people moving around, laughing, setting tables, preparing for Christmas celebrations that would no longer include her. Her phone buzzed with a text from her cousin Wei, "Missing you at Christmas planning. Hope you're doing okay." The performative concern was almost worse than honesty. They all knew she'd been uninvited. But they'd maintain the fiction that this was her choice, her inability to handle family gatherings, rather than their decision to exclude her. Marina was about to drive away when Jason came outside to get something from his car. He saw her immediately, and for a moment they just stared at each other through their windshields. He walked over, and she rolled down her window. "Marina, what are you doing here?" "Just passing through. Heading to the store." He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Listen, about Christmas. Don't worry about it. I understand. It's not personal. Mom just thought maybe a quiet holiday at home might be better for you given your situation." "My situation. You know what I mean. The job stress, the financial challenges. Maybe some time alone would actually be good?" "Good for who, Jason?" He didn't answer because they both knew the truth. It would be good for them. Easier, more comfortable, free from the awkwardness of including the family disappointment. "I hope you all have a wonderful time," Marina said, and she meant it. Really, genuinely meant it. Because she was done caring whether they included her. As she drove away, Marina felt something loosen in her chest. She'd spent 29 years seeking approval from people who'd never learned to see her clearly. Maybe it was time to build relationships with people who valued her for who she actually was, not who they needed her to be. The money in her account wasn't just financial freedom. It was the power to choose who deserved access to her life. Her family had made their choice about whether she belonged at their table. Now she would make hers. Priya choked on whatever she was drinking. "You what? Figured I should stop living like someone who makes what they think I make. The place is mine by New Year's." "Marina, that's..." Priya paused, calculating. "That's at least $500,000. 600,000, actually. But it's perfect. And most importantly, it's in a neighborhood where I'll never accidentally run into any of them." The decision had been impulsive, made during the soup course when Marina realized she was tired of shrinking herself to fit their perception of her limitations. If they were going to treat her like a failure regardless of her circumstances, she might as well enjoy her success without their judgment. "When do you move in?" "Next week. Professional movers, professional decorators, the whole thing. I'm done living like someone who's apologizing for existing." After dinner, Marina drove through her old neighborhood one last time. Past the house where her family was probably finishing their perfect, uncomplicated holiday dinner. Past the apartment building where she'd lived like someone perpetually temporary, always waiting for real life to begin. Tomorrow, she would start living like someone who belonged in the world. Someone whose success wasn't a delusion or a source of concern, but simply a fact. Someone whose worth wasn't determined by other people's ability to see it. The rain had stopped, and city lights reflected off wet pavement like scattered stars. Everything looked different from behind the wheel of her Lexus, in her expensive dress, carrying the knowledge of her expensive new condo. Not just richer, more real, more herself. For the first time in years, Marina felt genuinely grateful. Just not for the things her family would have expected. Christmas morning arrived gray and cold. Marina woke up in her apartment, soon to be her former apartment, surrounded by half-packed boxes and furniture she was donating. She'd already scheduled movers for next week, already signed a lease on a sleek 2-bedroom condo in the Arts District downtown, a neighborhood her family never visited. She'd made reservations at Celestine's, the most expensive restaurant in the city, the kind of place where meals cost more than her family typically spent on groceries in a month. She dressed carefully in a new silk dress, deep emerald green, that she'd bought specifically for this occasion. Not to impress anyone, but to remind herself that she deserved beautiful things. The restaurant was surprisingly full. Other people who'd opted out of traditional family gatherings, she realized. Solo diners, small groups of friends, couples who'd chosen each other over obligation. Her people, apparently. The hostess seated her at a window table overlooking the city lights. Will anyone be joining you today? No, just me. And I'd like to start with your best champagne. Celebrating? Marina smiled. My independence. As she sipped champagne that cost more than she used to spend on a week of groceries, Marina found herself thinking about what her family was doing. Probably sitting around her mother's table right now, making small talk about achievements and promotions, carefully not mentioning her absence. Or maybe they were talking about her, expressing concern about her mental health, her denial, her inability to accept reality. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lily. Merry Christmas. Hope you're having a peaceful day. Love you, red heart. The casual cruelty of it made Marina's breath catch. Love you, but not enough to include you. Love you, but not enough to believe in you. Love you, but only when it's convenient. She turned her phone face down and studied the menu. 7 courses of exquisitely prepared food, each dish a work of art. She ordered everything that appealed to her, plus wine pairings, because she could. Because money was no longer a consideration in her life. The irony wasn't lost on her. They'd excluded her for not being successful enough, while she sat in luxury they couldn't imagine affording, funded by money they'd never believed she had. Halfway through the meal, another text arrived from Jason. Mom's worried about you spending Christmas alone. Maybe we could grab coffee next week? Now they were worried. Now, when it was too late to include her, but not too late to assuage their guilt about excluding her. Marina typed back. Thanks, but I'm not alone. Having a wonderful time. Which was true. She was having a wonderful time being treated like a valued guest rather than a problem to be managed. The waitstaff was attentive without being patronizing. The sommelier explained wine pairings without talking down to her. Nobody questioned whether she could afford what she was ordering. It was refreshing to exist in a space where her worth wasn't constantly questioned. As she was finishing dessert, a white chocolate souffle that probably cost more than her mother's entire Christmas dinner, her phone rang. Priya. Merry Christmas, Marina. How's your fancy solo holiday going? Better than expected. The food is incredible, and nobody's called me delusional once. Progress. Are you ready for the next phase? They'd discussed this. The plan to gradually reveal her changed circumstances through actions rather than announcements. Let her family discover the truth on their own terms, when she was no longer available to manage their reactions. I bought a condo this morning, Marina said. Online auction. Cash offer. 2 bedrooms in the Arts District with a view of the river. Moving day arrived with military precision. Professional movers packed Marina's modest possessions while she supervised from her new living room, which featured floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river and exposed brick walls that belonged in architecture magazines. Her second-hand furniture looked absurd in rooms designed for much grander things. The contrast was almost comical, her $200 sofa dwarfed by 14-foot ceilings, her particle board bookshelf looking like a child's toy against the custom built-ins. That afternoon, Marina went shopping. Not the careful, budget-conscious shopping she'd done for years, checking price tags and calculating whether she really needed something, but the kind of shopping she'd only seen in movies. She bought a sectional that cost more than she used to make in a month. Original artwork that required its own insurance policy. A sound system that made her old TV look like a museum piece. The interior designer she'd hired, Patricia Young, who worked exclusively with wealthy clients, walked through the space with her, taking notes about preferences and possibilities. The bones of this space are exceptional, Patricia said, running her hand along the exposed brick. With your budget, we can create something truly special. Your budget. She said it like it was a given that Marina had one, rather than a hopeful assumption about her finances. It was refreshing to be seen accurately. That evening, Marina sat in her new living room, surrounded by expensive furniture that wouldn't be delivered for another week, and allowed herself to process what she'd done. She'd bought a home, not just any home, but the kind of place that announced its owner's success to anyone who visited. Her family would find out eventually. Probably when someone spotted her at one of the upscale restaurants downtown or noticed her address on holiday cards. Their reaction would be predictable: confusion, suspicion, and ultimately some explanation that preserved their narrative about her limitations. Maybe she'd inherited money from a distant relative. Maybe she'd married someone wealthy in secret. Maybe she was renting the condo and pretending to own it. Any explanation would be more believable than the truth, that she'd been successful all along, and they'd been too invested in her failure to notice. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Lily drove past your apartment. The manager said you moved out. Where are you living now? Marina stared at the message for several minutes. This was the moment. She could ease them into the truth gradually, provide her new address and let them see the evidence of her changed circumstances. Or she could let them continue wondering while she built her new life without their involvement. She typed back, "Found a better place. Don't worry about me." Her mother's response came immediately, "Marina, I'm your mother. Of course I worry. What's the address? I'd like to see where you're living." The address. If she gave her mother her address, Diane would drive by within hours. She'd see the building, the neighborhood, the doorman, the other residents' luxury cars in the parking garage. She'd have to confront the fact that her concerning daughter was living better than any of them. Part of Marina wanted that confrontation. Wanted to see her mother's face when she realized how completely she'd misjudged her daughter's circumstances. But another part, the part that had learned to protect itself over years of subtle diminishment, wasn't ready for that conversation. Marina turned her phone off without responding. The silence felt powerful. For 29 years, she'd been available for their judgments, their advice, their management of her life. She'd accepted their assessments of her capabilities and their decisions about her place in the family hierarchy. But money, she was discovering, didn't just buy things. It bought choices. The choice to engage or not engage. The choice to prove herself or not prove herself. The choice to accept their version of who she was or create her own. The next morning, Marina woke up in her new master bedroom, sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked the river. She made coffee in a kitchen larger than her entire previous apartment, then sat at a marble island that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Not that she needed their help, but that she didn't. Their family dynamic had depended on Marina being the one who needed management, guidance, financial advice. "I've never needed you," Marina said gently. "I wanted to be included." "There's a difference." Lily flinched like she'd been slapped. "That's not true. We're family. Of course you need us, do I? Because when you thought I was struggling, you uninvited me from Christmas. When you thought I was delusional about money, you laughed at me. When you thought I was making poor choices, you decided I was too embarrassing to include in family gatherings. We were trying to help. You were trying to manage a problem you thought I was. Now that I'm not a problem, you don't know how to relate to me." Lily stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the river. "This doesn't make sense, Marina. Your job, your salary, we know what you make. You couldn't afford." She gestured helplessly around the room. "Maybe you don't know as much about my situation as you thought." Lily spun around. "Are you going to tell me how this happened, or are we going to keep playing games?" Marina considered her options. This was the moment. She could maintain the mystery, let them keep wondering and guessing and driving themselves crazy trying to explain what they were seeing. Or she could end their confusion with a simple revelation that would change everything. "I won the lottery," she said finally. Lily blinked once, twice. Then she started laughing. "Oh, come on, Marina. Be serious." "I am being serious. The lottery. Your Friday night tickets. Those scratch-offs you waste money on." She was still laughing, but it was becoming more forced. "Marina, the biggest prize you ever won was $20. Marina pulled out her phone, scrolling to the photo she'd taken of the winning ticket. She handed it to Lily without a word. The laughter died on Lily's lips as she stared at the screen. The numbers, the date, the amount. $95 million. This isn't real. But her voice was barely a whisper. "Check it yourself. November 7th drawing. Those are the winning numbers." Lily was quiet for a long time, staring at the phone like it might change what it was showing her. Finally, she looked up with an expression Marina had never seen on her face before. Fear. Not of Marina, but of what Marina's success meant for the story they'd all been telling themselves. "How long have you known?" "Since November 8th. The day after the drawing. 2 weeks before Christmas." The timeline was sinking in. Marina had known about the money when Diane had uninvited her. She'd known when they were making jokes about her financial delusions. She'd known when they decided she was too much of a failure to include in family gatherings. "Marina," Lily whispered. "We had no idea." "No, you didn't. Because you never bothered to find out. You decided who I was, and nothing I said could change that narrative. Not even the truth." 3 weeks of silence later, Marina had established a new routine. Morning coffee on her private balcony overlooking the river. Work at the agency, where nobody knew about her windfall. Evenings in rooms that finally matched who she felt she was inside. Her colleagues had noticed changes, new clothes that fit better, confidence in her voice during presentations, a willingness to speak up in meetings. But they attributed it to professional growth, not personal wealth. "You seem different lately, Marina," her boss Jennifer mentioned during their weekly check-in. "More assured. If only she knew that Marina could buy the entire agency with what she had left after decorating expenses. The family silence couldn't last forever. On a Thursday evening, as Marina was arranging fresh flowers in her living room, the doorbell rang. She checked the security system's display and saw Lily standing at her door, looking nervous and out of place. She'd found her. Marina considered not answering, let Lily stand there wondering, the way Marina had stood outside their Christmas gathering, excluded and unwanted. But curiosity won. She needed to see how Lily would explain her circumstances to herself. She opened the door, leaning casually against the frame. "Lily, how did you find me?" "I hired someone." Lily was staring past Marina into the foyer, taking in the marble floors, the crystal chandelier, the original artwork on the walls. "Marina, what is this place?" "My home. Would you like to come in?" Lily followed her inside, mouth slightly open as they walked through rooms that belonged in design magazines. The living room with its custom furniture and river view. The kitchen with its professional-grade appliances and Italian tile. The dining room where flowers that cost more than Lily's weekly grocery budget sat in vases worth more than her car. "Marina." Lily stopped in the middle of the living room, turning in a slow circle. "How is this possible?" Marina settled into her favorite chair, Italian leather, custom-made, and gestured for Lily to sit on the sofa. She perched on the edge like she was afraid to touch anything. "What do you mean? This condo, this furniture, that Lexus in the parking garage. Where did this come from?" Marina could have told her the truth then. Could have pulled out the photo of the winning lottery ticket she still carried in her wallet and watched Lily's face as reality rearranged itself around the sister she thought she knew. Instead, she smiled. "I've been doing well." "Doing well?" Lily laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. "Marina, this isn't doing well. This is wealthy. This is millionaire wealthy." "Is it?" Her casual tone seemed to unsettle Lily more than a dramatic revelation would have. "Mom is going crazy. We all are. You disappeared, stopped answering calls, and now we find out you're living like this." "Like what, Lily?" "Like someone who doesn't need us anymore." There it was. The real fear. Not that Marina was struggling, but that she wasn't. Lily left 20 minutes later, clutching Marina's phone number and extracting a promise that Marina wouldn't tell the rest of the family until Lily had prepared them. Marina could see the calculations happening behind her eyes as she walked to her car. A 5-year-old Honda that suddenly looked very different parked next to Marina's Lexus. Marina didn't believe for a second that Lily would keep her secret. Lily had never kept a secret in her life, and this was too big, too shocking, too fundamental to everything their family believed about itself. She was right. Her phone started ringing at 7:30 the next morning. "Marina Chen, you answer this phone right now." Her mother's voice was shrill, barely controlled. Marina let it go to voicemail. Then she listened to the message while sipping her morning coffee. "I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but this has gone far enough. Lily told me the most ridiculous story about lottery winnings. Marina, I'm worried about your mental state. This fantasy you've created, it's concerning. Call me back immediately." The second call came from Jason 10 minutes later. "Hey Marina, Lily's telling some pretty wild stories. Look, if you need help with gambling addiction or mental health issues, we can figure something out. Just call me back, okay?" Gambling addiction. Because winning the lottery was less believable than her having a pathological relationship with lottery tickets. The third call was from her father. His approach was different, more analytical, less emotional. "Marina, your mother is very upset. I've been doing some research, and the odds of winning that jackpot were approximately 302 million to 1. I think we need to have a family meeting to discuss what's really going on here." A family meeting to discuss her delusions, no doubt. To stage an intervention for the daughter who'd lost touch with reality so completely that she was living in fantasy condos and claiming impossible windfalls. Marina didn't call any of them back. Instead, she made a decision. If her family wanted a meeting, they could have one, but it would be on her terms, in her space, with full disclosure of the truth they were so determined to deny. She sent a group text to all of them. "Family meeting Sunday at 2 p.m. my place. Address attached. Come prepared to listen." The responses were immediate and predictable. Her mother: "We're coming to help you, Marina. Not to enable these delusions." Jason: "What's this address? This can't be where you're living." Lily: "Should I bring anything?" Her father: "I'll be there. We need to get to the bottom of this situation." Only Lily's response suggested she might actually believe what she'd seen. The others were clearly planning an intervention. Perfect. Sunday morning, Marina prepared her condo like a courtroom. She arranged the lottery ticket, the actual physical ticket, On her dining room table, along with bank statements, the deed to her condo, purchase receipts for her car, everything they would need to accept the reality they were so determined to reject. She dressed carefully in a simple but expensive outfit. Nothing flashy, but everything clearly high quality. She wanted to look successful, not like someone having a manic episode. At exactly 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Marina watched through the security camera as her family clustered in the hallway, staring at the building directory, the marble lobby, the doorman who'd directed them to her floor. Her mother was the first through the door. She entered Marina's foyer like she was walking into a crime scene, eyes darting around as if looking for evidence of whatever con game she was convinced Marina was running. "Marina, whose place is this really?" "Mine, Mom." "Welcome." The others filed in behind her. Her father with his analytical expression. Jason looking uncomfortable. Lily trying to appear supportive while clearly struggling with her own shock. Marina led them to her living room, where they perched uneasily on furniture worth more than their annual salaries. "Well," her father said, pulling out a small notebook. "I think we should start with some basic questions about your financial situation." Marina gestured to the dining room table. "All your questions are answered over there." They followed her to the table where she'd laid out the evidence like exhibits in a trial. Her mother picked up the lottery ticket first, examining it with the intensity of someone looking for forgery. "This could be fake." "Check the numbers online," Marina said calmly. Her father was already pulling out his phone, comparing the ticket numbers to the official lottery website. His expression shifted from skepticism to confusion to something approaching shock. These are the actual winning numbers." Jason grabbed the bank statements, scanning the balance column. His face went pale. "Marina, this shows $57 million. After taxes." "Yes." The silence that followed was profound. 4 people sitting around Marina's dining room table. A table that cost more than any of their cars, staring at evidence that their fundamental assumptions about her had been completely wrong. Her mother was the first to speak, her voice barely audible. "How long have you known?" "Since November 8th. 2 weeks before Christmas." The implications hit them in waves. Marina could see it on their faces as they remembered conversations, decisions, dismissals that had happened after she'd become one of the wealthiest people in the state. "You knew," Lily whispered. "When we uninvited you from Christmas, you knew." "I knew. When Mom said I had nothing to be thankful for, I knew. When you laughed about my delusions of being wealthy, I knew." The weight of their behavior settled over the room like fog. Every patronizing comment, every dismissal, every assumption about her limitations, all of it had happened while she possessed the means to change all of their lives forever. Her father cleared his throat, trying to process the new information. "Marina, why didn't you tell us?" "I tried to, remember? I tried to tell you I was doing well, that I could afford nice things, that I wanted to contribute to Christmas dinner. Your response was to question my mental health." Her mother's face had gone ashen. "We didn't know." "No, you didn't. Because you never considered the possibility that I might actually be successful. It was easier to believe I was delusional than to admit you might have been wrong about me." The confession hung in the air between them, changing everything and nothing at the same time. Because now came the real test. What would they do with the truth?